I still remember the moment my entire future changed because of one sentence spoken across a dinner table. I had walked into my neighbor's house expecting homemade lasagna and polite conversation, but before I had even taken my seat, she smiled at her stunned parents, pointed directly at me, and calmly said, "This is my boyfriend." The room fell completely silent. My fork slipped from my hand. Her father slowly looked at me with confusion, her mother burst into tears of happiness, and I realized I had just become the center of a lie I knew absolutely nothing about. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to life. Until that afternoon, my life had been painfully ordinary. My name is Carson Hale, and I had spent the last 3 years rebuilding myself after losing both my parents within 18 months of each other. Grief has a strange way of shrinking your world. Friends slowly stop calling because they don't know what to say. Family members move away. Even laughter begins to sound unfamiliar. I buried myself in work as a residential architect, designing homes that other families would fill with memories while I returned each evening to an apartment that echoed with silence. My greatest comfort came from small routines. Morning coffee on my balcony. Feeding the stray orange cat that wandered through our apartment complex. Smiling politely at neighbors I barely knew. Life wasn't exciting, but it was peaceful enough to survive. Among those neighbors was a woman named Delaney Brooks. She had moved into the apartment across the hall about 8 months earlier with dozens of houseplants, stacks of books, and an endless supply of cheerful energy that somehow never felt fake. While most people rushed through hallways with headphones on, Delaney always stopped to ask how someone was doing. She remembered birthdays. She baked cookies for new tenants. She helped elderly residents carry groceries without ever expecting thanks. We gradually became friendly, sharing coffee in the courtyard on weekend mornings and talking about everything from childhood dreams to favorite movies. She possessed the rare ability to make loneliness feel temporary. Still, I never imagined we were anything more than neighbors who happened to enjoy each other's company. She never flirted. I never crossed any boundaries. We existed in that comfortable space where friendship asked for nothing but honesty. Everything changed on one bright Saturday morning when she knocked on my door carrying a pie covered with foil. She smiled nervously and explained that her parents were driving into town for the afternoon. She admitted they had been worried about her living alone and insisted on meeting the people she spent time with. She laughed awkwardly and asked if I would join them for dinner because she had mentioned having a nice neighbor who always helped carry heavy packages upstairs. It sounded harmless. I agreed. Looking back now, I realize that life often disguises its biggest moments as ordinary invitations. Her apartment smelled like fresh bread, roasted vegetables, and cinnamon when I arrived. Family photographs decorated every wall. Her mother hugged me before I even introduced myself, thanking me for being kind to her daughter. Her father shook my hand firmly with the reserved expression of a man carefully evaluating everyone who entered his family's life. I relaxed, convinced the evening would simply be good food and pleasant conversation. Then everything collapsed. Without warning, Delaney looked at both of them, reached for my hand before I could react, and proudly announced that I was her boyfriend. The silence felt endless. I stared at her. She refused to meet my eyes. Her parents looked happier than I had ever seen two strangers look. Inside my chest, confusion exploded into panic. Every instinct told me to stand up and correct the lie immediately. But then I noticed something strange. Her hands were trembling. Not slightly. Violently. She looked terrified instead of excited. Her father suddenly smiled with visible relief. He admitted they had spent months worrying because Delaney kept avoiding conversations about relationships. Her mother wiped tears from her cheeks and thanked God that her daughter had finally found someone kind. I couldn't understand why Delaney looked like she wanted to cry. Dinner continued beneath a mountain of uncomfortable questions. How had we met? How long had we been dating? What were our future plans? Delaney answered every question with carefully constructed half-truths that mixed real memories with invented romance. Every sentence increased the weight pressing against my conscience. When dessert finally arrived, she quietly asked if I could help bring something from her bedroom closet. The moment the bedroom door closed, she burst into tears. She apologized over and over before I could even ask what was happening. Between sobs, the truth finally emerged. Her mother had recently undergone heart surgery. Recovery had been physically successful, but emotionally fragile. Doctors warned the family to avoid major stress whenever possible. At the same time, Delaney's father had become convinced she was sacrificing her own happiness by remaining single while caring for everyone else. During every phone call they begged her to settle down, worrying they might never see her build a family before they grew too old. Weeks earlier, she had casually mentioned having a kind neighbor. Her parents had become convinced that neighbor was secretly someone special. She kept trying to correct the misunderstanding. Every attempt ended with her mother becoming emotional. Finally, overwhelmed by guilt and fear, she made the worst decision of her life. She invited me to dinner without telling me the truth. She admitted she hated herself for lying. She said she deserved whatever anger came next. Looking into her tear-filled eyes, I saw not manipulation but desperation. I should have walked away. Instead, I quietly asked one question. What happens if I leave right now? She looked toward the living room where her parents laughed together for what sounded like the first time all afternoon. Then she whispered that her mother's recovery would probably survive. But her father's heart might not. He had spent years believing he failed as a provider because his daughter postponed her own dreams while helping them through medical bills and difficult seasons. Seeing her happy had given him hope he hadn't carried in years. That answer broke something inside me. I agreed to stay through dinner. Only dinner. Nothing more. When I left that evening, Delaney thanked me with tears still streaming down her face. I assumed the strange experience had ended. I was completely wrong. The following week, her parents mailed me a handwritten letter thanking me for making their daughter smile again. The week after that, they invited both of us to a daytime family barbecue. Delaney begged me not to come. She wanted to confess everything. But before she could, her mother suffered another medical complication that required hospitalization. Thankfully it wasn't life-threatening, but the emotional strain returned. Once again, the truth felt impossible to reveal. One temporary favor became another. Then another. Months quietly slipped away. The strangest part was that pretending gradually stopped feeling like pretending. We spent real afternoons together. Real conversations. Real road trips. Real laughter. We celebrated birthdays. Supported each other through work frustrations. Helped neighbors after storms. Volunteered together at community food drives. Without realizing it, we built an actual relationship beneath the fake one. The lie remained. But the feelings became painfully real. Then everything shattered. Nearly a year after that unforgettable dinner, I accidentally discovered a small notebook tucked inside one of Delaney's books while helping her pack for a move across the apartment complex. I wasn't snooping. It simply fell onto the floor. The page opened to a dated journal entry written weeks before she had invited me to dinner. My heart stopped. She admitted she had already been in love with me for months before inventing the fake relationship. She described watching me feed stray cats before work. She wrote about hearing me play piano through the apartment walls on Sunday afternoons. She confessed she never believed someone carrying so much grief could still show so much kindness. Every page after that became more heartbreaking. She hadn't chosen me randomly. She chose me because I was the only man she had ever wanted. But she believed I would never feel the same. The fake relationship had begun as fear. Somewhere along the way, it became her greatest regret because every genuine smile we shared reminded her it had started with dishonesty. I gently closed the notebook before she noticed. That evening I couldn't sleep. For the first time, I understood the deepest truth. The biggest lie between us wasn't that we were dating. It was pretending neither of us had fallen completely in love. The next morning I knocked on her apartment door carrying the journal. She immediately realized what had happened. The color disappeared from her face. Before she could apologize again, I quietly admitted I had something to confess to. Somewhere between pretending to care and actually caring, I had forgotten where the performance ended. I loved her. Not because of the fake relationship. Not because of her parents. Not because fate pushed us together. I loved the woman who remembered everyone's birthdays, rescued abandoned animals, cried over hurting people she loved, and carried impossible burdens without asking anyone to rescue her. She collapsed into tears. So did I. For several minutes neither of us spoke. Sometimes silence says everything words cannot. But one impossible challenge still remained. Her parents deserved the truth. Neither of us wanted our future built upon a foundation of deception. A week later we invited them to lunch. I have never been more frightened in my life. Delaney told them everything. From the misunderstanding. To the fake announcement. To the months of pretending. To the unexpected love that slowly replaced every lie. Her father sat motionless. Her mother quietly cried. The silence felt even heavier than the first dinner. Finally her father stood. He walked toward me. For one terrifying second I wondered if he would ask me to leave forever. Instead he wrapped both of us in the strongest hug I had received since my own father died. He admitted he had known something wasn't quite right during that first dinner. Real couples usually interrupt each other naturally. We had been too careful. Too rehearsed. He simply chose to believe what gave his family hope. Her mother smiled through tears and said the beginning had been messy, but every day afterward had looked increasingly real. She forgave us because love often arrives in unexpected ways, and sometimes frightened people make foolish decisions while trying to protect those they cherish. Relief flooded every corner of my heart. Months later, under bright afternoon sunlight in the community garden where we first shared coffee as neighbors, I asked Delaney to marry me. This time there were no lies. No pretending. No surprises. Only honesty. She smiled with tears shining in her eyes and whispered yes before I had even finished asking. The apartment complex celebrated with us. The elderly neighbors she had helped over the years brought homemade desserts. Children she tutored made handwritten cards. Even the stray orange cat wandered into the celebration as though it somehow understood happiness. On our wedding day, her father gave a toast that no one forgot. He laughed about the worst fake introduction in family history before saying something far more important. He reminded everyone that relationships rarely begin perfectly. Some begin with awkward timing. Others begin with mistakes. A few begin with misunderstandings so unbelievable they sound impossible. What determines their future isn't how they started but whether the people involved eventually choose truth, forgiveness, and courage. As I looked across the room at the woman who had accidentally changed my life with one impossible sentence, I realized my parents would have loved her. Not because she was perfect. Because she kept choosing kindness even after failing. Because she admitted her mistakes instead of hiding them forever. Because she believed broken beginnings could still become beautiful endings. Speech balloon special request: before the story ends, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in this situation? If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more meaningful and inspiring stories. Your support encourages us to keep creating stories that touch hearts around the world. Life has a remarkable way of writing love stories that no one would dare invent. Sometimes the people who hurt us are carrying fears we cannot see. Sometimes forgiveness opens doors that pride keeps locked forever. And sometimes the most beautiful families are not built by perfect people making perfect choices, but by imperfect hearts brave enough to tell the truth, ask for forgiveness, offer grace, and choose love every single day. In the end, second chances are not rewards for flawless lives, they are gifts that allow ordinary people to create extraordinary futures together.